Okay, let's move ahead with our class. We'll continue our classes on the molecular relationship. This time we're going to talk about the mystery of romantic energy. Now, the correctness and incorrectness of the sharing of sexual energies has been a cause of debate for like thousands of years because it's kind of a mysterious energy. People don't understand it. They understand that they're attracted to other people, and they understand that they want satisfaction. But as far as handling the energies, it's kind of a mystery. A little bit like the female energy itself is a mystery to the male. Males are very simple. They're compared to if we compare the males to an animal, would be dogs. We're like, dogs are very simple. They just want to eat and be petted, and it's very simple to make a dog happy. Now, females are more compared to cats. Cats are more complicated. They're very complex to keep happy and to understand, and they're very independent, and they're more mysterious and complicated than a dog, you know. So us guys are like puppy dogs. We're very simple to understand what makes us happy. But especially sexually, we're very simple. But females are more like cats, and they're more complicated. And so think of Garfield the cat compared to Odie the dog, kind of. So females are often called, the word mystique has always been associated with females, which is interesting because throughout history, men have complained that they can't understand females. And so it's because the females represent an invisible energy, because they represent an invisible energy, which is magnetism and gravity. All these invisible energies that hold everything together are female, and you can't see it. You can't see gravity. But the male energy in the universe is radiation. So you look at the sun is really obvious that it's there and it's doing something. And that's a male energy. So the male energy is obvious, and you look at it, you can see what it's doing. The female energy is very mystical, and it holds everything together, but we can't see what it is and what it's up to. So it's interesting. And the sexual energy is a little like this in the fact that people do not understand it and how it plays out. Now, the right use of sexual energy is different for different people at different varying stage of evolution and consciousness. And the right use for each individual is the highest use which his consciousness can accept. So the sexual energy is one of the reasons that people don't understand it is what is right and wrong in sex is determined largely by the consciousness of the person. And this is why you have two people of two different stages of consciousness will not be able to come together and understand each other as far as sexual energy goes, because their consciousness is so much different. There's 4 different categories or 4 different ways that people look at sex. The first is the material, non-spiritual view. Now, this person feels no guilt in having sex with whoever is willing. This person is interested in the physical satisfaction, and that's pretty much all this person identifies with, is sex on the physical basis, a little bit like the animals do. Okay, so this person has difficulty in merging with the deeper emotional energies of which is the next step up. Now, the basic rule of sex is this: the less energy that is shared in sex, the less discriminating the person need be in the use and selection of partners. The more energy that is capable of being shared in sex, the more discriminating the person must be in its use. If there's no energy shared outside of the physical basis, then there is no sin, no guilt, no nothing. What's interesting about animals, for instance, animals share sex based on the physical urge, and they don't feel guilt. They don't have any sense of right and wrong about sex, and they have no sin in connection with sex. I used to raise chickens, and it's interesting to watch them have sex. When the rooster decides he wants to have sex with a hen, he actually rapes that hen. He'll be strutting around and he'll spot a hen he wants to have sex with, and he starts chasing it, and she runs away. The hen will run away, and the rooster is faster and stronger than the hen, so he eventually catches up with her, jumps on top of her, and does his thing, and actually rapes that little hen. And the hens never go voluntarily. And so, but does the rooster have any guilt about what he just did? No, he doesn't have. He actually rapes his hen and feels proud of himself for doing it. So he has absolutely no guilt in connection with it. So why is this rooster able to actually rape a hen and have no guilt in association with it? And the hen, she kind of flutters her wings afterwards, and you could tell she had a thrill go through her body. So she apparently didn't complain too much. But so it's interesting. So why can this rooster do such what we would consider an egregious act, yet he feels absolutely no guilt? But if one of us were to do something like that to a female, we would think, boy, this was a terrible thing I just did. What's the difference? What's the difference in the two life forms?
Especially if you did it to a chick.
What's that?
Because roosters are foul and we aren't.
Roosters are foul. Good.
I was just being smart.
Yeah. Okay, so it's interesting. DK says this about sin. He says, sin entered in when desire came into play. Desire. So the animals have a physical desire maybe, but not a desire on the emotional level. When the desire on the emotional level comes in, then everything begins to change. And so
the rooster operates on instinct more than
right. But there are people on the physical plane in this first category that are kind of a little bit like animals in the fact that they just want physical satisfaction and they don't feel any guilt, hardly any guilt at all. Maybe they're just learning to be sensitive, but they have few qualms about who they have sex with, and even if it's with a married person, it doesn't seem to bother them, So there's people in that category. Now, the second category second way of looking at sex is associating it with romantic love and sharing the emotions. So this, as the person evolves, he evolves above the physical, and he eventually wants to have something more than just a physical satisfaction. They want to share on an emotional level. And then when people start sharing on an emotional level, they find there is more satisfaction than just the physical. They find that people decide they want to get married because they find that special person, that relationship has a reward. It's beyond the physical. It's an emotional sharing. And this emotional sharing enhances the physical and enhances the whole relationship experience. But it also adds in a bunch of complexity. In other words, if you have an emotional sharing with another individual, and then you that individual feels like you have a special relationship, and then you go and have a romance with somebody else, that person will feel betrayed. Now, this doesn't happen to an animal. A rooster, he has sex with that hen, and he goes and has sex with another hen. The first hen doesn't care at all. You know, it doesn't bother her. But with us, when we start sharing on an emotional level, it changes everything. So there's a sense of commitment there, and that commitment brings a deeper sharing. Now, the third type of sharing is what we call the black and white view. These people with a black and white view can only enjoy guilt-free sex if their union is approved by the church, legal system, friends, or authorities. So this group is governed by outward authority. And the outward authority tells them what is right and wrong in their relationship, what they can and they can't do. And this produces a lot of guilt that where the rules are broken. Now, the fourth category is added to the person who is evolved enough to understand the true principles governing sexual expression. Union on the highest possible levels is the prime goal. The person seeks not only the physical union, but the emotional union, romance. The guy will bring flowers, the female will appreciate the interplay on the emotional level, but they will go higher. They will seek for the higher mind and the spiritual union, and to bring in the higher self into the relationship. So, any comments on those four categories before we move on? The main thing for us to understand as far as romantic energy is interesting, and it just seems to apply to humans. Doesn't apply in the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. They do not share that romantic energy. But romantic energy, you have to look at it like each person has one unit of this romantic energy. And if a person is single and not in a relationship, then he or she keeps this romantic energy within their own astral body. Okay, and they're fairly stable. So you can be not in a romantic relationship, and if you're not in a romantic relationship, you keep this energy within, and you're in a fair state of balance. But then, as you're moving along, you meet somebody that kind of gets your attention, and you start sharing a certain amount of your romantic energy. So this romantic energy, you have 100% you're keeping in. Now, you meet somebody, you send out a certain amount of romantic energy. And for every amount you send out, if you send out 25%, you need to get 25% back to stay in balance. If you send out 50%, you need to get 50% back to stay in balance. So the key in everything all life forms do is they seek balance. And in the romantic sharing, balance is also necessary, but people don't really think of it that way. But it's really as scientific as looking at the balance achieved with the various elements and chemicals combining, and they seek balance through their interplay. So I'll read you an example that I wrote up about this sharing of energies and how it works. Let us take a guy named Jim, for instance. He's been a happy single person for the past 5 years. He finds himself in a state of balance where he's sending out no romantic energy, and he keeps his entire romantic unit to himself. That is until Sue crosses his path. He finds her very attractive, and after a date, he decides to go out on a limb, and he sends her 25% of his emotional energy. She's not interested and does not return it. Then Jim feels out of balance for a few weeks until he gets a message that she's not interested, and he gradually pulls this energy back in and gets back in balance again. Now, Jim may not realize it, but it is not his destiny to remain single. A short time later, he meets Betty and bravely ventures forth 25% of his romantic energy again. This time, the reaction is different. Betty is attracted to Jim and returns not only the 25%, but a 25% more. She sends him 50%. Now she is the one taking the chance because she is giving 50% and getting 25% back. And if she does not draw more energy out of Jim, she will feel out of balance. Jim, on the other hand, feels great. He takes 25% of her 50% and adds to it the 75% and adds it to the 75% he already keeps inside of himself. And he now has 100% and he's very stable. But he has a 25% surplus of energy that's just going out in the universe. Now, the truth of the matter is Jim felt burnt by Sue in the previous relationship. So he's reluctant to let down any more walls. So he keeps his sending energy at just 25%. Now, on the other hand, Betty is beginning to feel shortchanged and unstable, for she only has her 50% plus Jim's 25% and has 25% just dissipating. She now reaches a point where she must draw more out of Jim or end the relationship. So she tells Jim, either we get serious about each other or we're history. That does it. Jim wakes up. He likes Betty and does not want to lose her. He increases his energy to 75% sending, and Betty responds likewise. That's enough to do the trick. They spend the next several years then sharing between 60 to 80% of their energy together, always trying for that 100%, but never quite achieving it. They're both afraid to let down those last few walls. Then comes a time when Sue bounces back in the picture. Now that she cannot have Jim, she finds him attractive because people always want that which they can't have. And she sends him 25% of her energy. Jim and Betty are both sharing around 80%, but Jim is flattered, and he returns to Sue her 25% plus another 15. He's really infatuated by her. So he winds up sending her 40%. Now he's only sending Betty 40%, and she feels a definite void and asks Jim, "Is there another woman?" "Of course not," he responds. "That's just your imagination." He says this halfway believing it because physically he has been faithful, but he does not realize that he has robbed Betty of her energy. While Jim is leaking out energy to Sue, Bob, a family friend, picks up Betty's need for emotional support and invites her to lunch. He's always liked her as a friend, but never felt impressed to show her romantic attention until now, for he feels her need for energy. He accepts her 40% and sends her 80. She responds by withdrawing the remaining 40% from Jim and sending an entire 80% to Bob. They immediately have an affair. Now Jim is beside himself. He has a 15% overflow to Sue and a 40% to Betty, and 55% of his energy is missing. When Betty is late getting home from work that night, he's suspicious. He questions her. She's defensive. He knows something is wrong and does not want to lose her. He becomes desperate. He withdraws the 25% from Sue, which causes her to feel strangely out of balance, and pleadingly sends an additional 10% from within he's never given to Betty before. He's now sending to Betty 90% and getting back 0. He's devastated and almost completely loses his will to live unless he can get her back. So now we have put our point across. Let's make a long story short. Jim and Betty patch up their marriage, but because of guilt and pain, they're both hesitant to share more than 60% of the energy for years to come. Jim never does realize that his innocent yielding to Sue by sending some of his feelings was an indirect cause of the whole crisis to the marriage. All he can think of is, why did Betty do this to me? He doesn't realize that he was the one that initiated the whole thing because of energy itself. Now, on the other hand, Betty is not without responsibility. She could have resisted Bob and put her energy into restoring balance, but she would have never had the temptation from Bob if Jim had not taken the energy that was rightfully hers. So to sum this up, the key to romantic energy is this. Each person has one unit of romantic energy, and when the sharing of that energy begins, the amount that is shared must be returned to keep peace and stability going. Okay, what do you think of that? Can you identify with the idea of sharing romantic energy? Adam and Marnie is a happy couple there, and I would guess you two share close to 100% and feel in balance. What do you think about that, Adam? Are you two in pretty good balance, you think?
You better ask Marnie that. I feel
Now, Adam's a good-looking guy. Does that? Do you feel a little bit of energy flow when good-looking females flirt with him? Here's my guess on Adam.
she's probably more worried about
You're trying to get him in trouble.
Here's my guess with Adam is when good-looking females flirt with him, you know, the guy can't keep maybe 100% of the time. He'll feel a little energy pulled because, you know, he's flattered. but then you pull it back in, right? So that would be my guess. But in those 5 minutes where maybe the energy's pulled out, Marnie might feel, oh, what's going on here? But then Adam pulls it back in and she feels stable again. That would be my guess. Does that sound like a good guess, Adam?
I don't know that I've ever had that much attraction, honestly. Marnie's probably more sensitive if there's emotional connection with anyone.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, yeah. But I don't get that much. I don't get that much play from the beautiful ladies.
How about Marnie? Have you ever had guys flirt with her that you noticed?
No.
Have I ever what?
Have you ever noticed guys flirting with her?
Yeah. I mean, not. I don't know. I mean, I guess
Here's my guess with Marnie. I know she's very dedicated to you. So even if a guy flirts with her, she doesn't let hardly energy leak out, right? She's friendly.
very friendly.
Nice to them, but she won't give them any go ahead feeling.
No, in fact, I think I've said to her a couple times, boy, you should you know, I try to tell her and other females, you know, guys are looking at you whether you think it or not, and you know, there's a lot of scoping that goes on, and she always denies it, but you know, as a guy, I know.
Yeah, I mean, guys will, if you have a good looking spouse, people will flirt with that person. And when you're flirted with, of course, you think, well, that's kind of flattering, that's kind of nice, and but you have control over whether or not the actual romantic energy comes out of you to the other person. If it does, that person will get the hint and then increase the flirting. But if they don't get the hint, I remember when I had a group one time, I was teaching, there was this one girl that really came on to me really strong. I mean, matter of fact, I'm not married to the gal now but my ex-wife, she went and told my ex-wife, she says, I'm after your husband. I'm going to take him away from you. But I didn't give her any romantic energy at all. I was just totally not interested. I saw what she was trying to do. I didn't give her energy. And she eventually became very frustrated and tried to take part of the group away because she said I had no heart. She said I was not in tune with heart energy. Well, what she was picking up was I was not in tune with sharing romantic energy with her to any degree whatsoever. And but she interpreted that as heart energy, and she thought I was just totally out of touch with my own heart, which of course I did not think that I was. But she was just picking up that trying to work with the romantic energy. And so this will happen periodically. And okay, let's pick on somebody else here. Michelle is happily married little gal. Can you identify with the sharing of romantic energy, Michelle?
Between my husband and myself.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
One thing that can interfere with it is like if you have an argument, you ever have arguments?
No.
Really?
Never.
You ever have arguments? Wow. You must have
Well,
live in paradise. Anyway, if you have a strong argument, the romantic energy goes down until the argument is resolved. So you probably had some type of conflict one time or another, I imagine. And when this happens, you can feel that romantic energy go down. And this is also can create a door opening for temptation, because let's say you just had a powerful argument with your spouse, your romantic energy is all pulled back into yourself, and then you go to work and you meet some gal that flirts with you, or some guy that flirts with you if you're a girl, and then the temptation comes on a lot more stronger. So it's important in a relationship that you keep the relationship smooth, resolve any arguments. And this also applies to friendship to a degree, but friendship has astral energy associated with it, but it's different than romantic energy. Romantic energy is a certain type that just applies in the magnetic attraction of one person toward another. It's interesting to focus on. Okay, any comments on that before we move on? We'll go a little bit over since we started late here. Any comments on anything we've covered?
When you talk about magnetic energy, is it more like emotional stealing from one person to the other?
Emotional stealing, did you say?
Emotional stealing, yes.
Stealing or feeling?
Steal,
Steal.
taking it away. And I
Yeah,
think
you can't
woman has a very good sensors on that.
Yeah, you can't really steal another person's emotional energy. They have to open the door. But it can feel like stealing because if the person is aggressive. Like you watch these movies where some guys has a happy relationship with his wife or spouse, and then some guru or something, kid gets his eye on her and he really comes on strong, produces a lot of problem. It's almost like he's trying to steal her, but she has to give up that energy of her own free will. And so it's almost, he attempts to steal, you could say, but if a person shares romantic energy, it's always a decision based on a decision that they have made. And it's important to understand this when people enter into relationships, romantic relationships with other people. Now, if you're single and happy being single, that's fine. Let's pick on old Ed here. He's a single guy and he seems pretty content with himself. And Ed, what if some female came on to you strong that you really liked? Are you still open? Or are you?
That all depends. I've turned down more opportunities than I've ever taken advantage of.
Yeah, now you're in your 80s. I keep forgetting the exact age. What are you, 82 is it?
82. I'm 82 and
Yeah.
on my way to a million.
Are you at the point where you think, well, I'm just going to glide through being single the rest of my life now? Or are you still?
Well, I've been there and I've done that. You know, I don't feel I've ever missed anything in life. And, you know, I am on to other kinds of enterprises now.
So your romantic energy is all pretty much contained, so you feel pretty stable, right? I would guess.
Well, I feel stable. I just look at it this way. I mean, I've entered into the human experience. When I was a teenager, I didn't want to necessarily, but life makes you get involved in life. You have to be involved in life to grow. Yeah. So I found that I chose the involvements that I would be involved in, and I've been there and done that.
Right. I've been married 3 times, and one thing I found about a new relationship is it takes about 2 years to settle in and stabilize the energy. But when you first fall fall in love with somebody, I mean, you're just, you're very distracted. So it's a very distracting thing to all of a sudden have that energy pretty much contained. You're completely stable like OED is. And then all of a sudden you feel like sharing 100%. And it's an experience that takes your attention totally off whatever you were doing and puts it on the relationship. And I found that when the relationship begins, there's a lot of learning about each other and adjusting to each other. And I would say in a good relationship that's going to produce stability, takes about 2 years to get the interplay where it's nice and stable. And if you can get it stable, then you're a really lucky person, because it's amazing how many people do wind up divorced. And in the metaphysical and New Age communities, there aren't very many happily married people. It's amazing how many of them are single. And most of the people in our group here are single. But a lot of the single people would like to find that one and only that they could share 100% with. But sharing the 100% is a big challenge for us all. Okay, I don't think we have time to go on to the next category, but next week we're going to talk about 3 keys to happiness. And I'll just read you what they are. Key number 1 is communion. And key number 2 is giving and receiving. Key number 3 is trust. So these are 3 keys to happiness and relationship. So, okay, before we sign off, any other comments or questions you want to bring up?
Well, for me, having had the experiences I had as a teenager of what real life is in the spiritual sense, I was never satisfied with what I found when I went out into the world.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not simplistic. I'm a very complex sort of person.
Has anyone here just fallen completely head over heels in love in their life? I imagine a number of you have. If you have, well, speak up.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that part of the problem we had in this virtual world with this person breaking in, this person started talking to me about being a hostess for our club, and anything that came up in our conversation, it was like this person had read a book on Rick Audette, and she had every answer down pat. It's like, you know, to the point where she had me convinced, oh man, this is the happily ever after. You know, I've got to make a connection with this person. But it was like it was manufactured. Somehow she got a hold of information or something of what answers I would like to hear from her, and she had it down like it was rehearsed.
Yeah. And it's interesting it's interesting how people can play with emotion. So, you got any closing comments, Curtis, you want to add?
No, just keep yourself centered, balanced, and do the right thing.
Now, I know you pretty good. I know you've been crazy in love and then crazy in being out of sorts a couple times in your life. Yeah. So that emotional energy can really rock you back and forth, can it?
It's like a yo-yo. Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. If you're in a good relationship, well, you know, feel like you're lucky. If you're not, and doesn't look like you'll have one in this life, well, you're going to have another life. sooner or later, you're going to have lives where you're just head over heels in love and have some great unions that you will keep with you for not only a lifetime, but for a number of lifetimes. So,
Always hope for you, Ed.
yeah. I feel sorry for these people that just believe in one life and then they never find someone to really share it with. So they feel like, boy, I've just missed out for all eternity. I'm never going to have the experience of coming to Earth and finding somebody to really share with. In the meantime,
One thing about a molecule is you can find, if you're lacking in one area, you've got friends that you can connect with that'll help balance you, spend time and energy with on a platonic level.
yeah, and in groups like this one that we have, people do a lot of sharing, and that gives satisfaction on an emotional level, which is helps everybody to feel more stable. And okay, really good group today. Appreciate your energy, and we will see you next week, next Sunday at 2 p.m. all being well.
Okay.
And send me your email address there, Adam.
You put it in the chat.
Gosh, nobody noticed that I got younger this week.
It's in the chat, Curtis.
I see it now. I see it.
Yeah, you do look a little younger, Rick.
Come.
By the way, you can save the chat if there's a ... at the bottom right corner and click that. Choose save chat.
We got all the air off
Really?
your
There's-
face.
You're in here a lot.
Okay. Okay, we'll see you next week.